If a little girl walked into your office clutching nothing but hope in a tiny backpack, looked you in the eye and quietly asked, "Where can I buy a dad?" What would you do? Today's story is not about business empires or billionaire deals. It's about a moment that shattered every wall a man spent his life building, and how a child's question made a millionaire CEO cry in front of everyone. Nathaniel Carter believed he had seen it all: the Monday boardroom wars, the hostile takeovers, the ice-cold dismissals. Every morning for 20 years, he walked through the glass doors of Carter Holdings with his world precisely ordered, suit pressed, shoes shining, mind set for battle. He was the man with all the answers, the billionaire everyone admired from a distance, the executive who never let life surprise him. But on this rainy Wednesday, even the marble floors and golden light couldn't stop the unease prickling at the back of his neck as he entered the building. His assistant Julia, always punctual, always flustered, rushed to his side, shuffling the briefing documents. The lobby's busy rhythm faltered as Nathaniel stopped short, eyes fixed on something no one else seemed to notice. There by the reception desk, a little girl sat quietly on the floor. She didn't belong in this world of cold steel and glass. She was impossibly small, 6, maybe 7, with hair the color of summer wheat, tangled from wind and rain, falling in soft curls around her cheeks. Her denim jacket was clearly secondhand, and her white dress, carefully chosen no doubt, was wrinkled and stained at the hem. Her pink sneakers were scuffed, laces uneven, but none of that mattered. What made Nathaniel freeze was her gaze, blue eyes wide and unblinking, shining with a strange combination of innocence and resolve. In her lap was a faded backpack, its zippers worn, covered in cartoon stars. She didn't fidget. She didn't whimper or plead. She just waited, as if this was the most ordinary place in the world for a little girl to sit and wait, like she'd done it 1,000 times before. For a moment, no one seemed to notice her. Executives hurried by, heads bowed. The security guard at the door glanced at her, uncertain, then looked away. The receptionist offered Nathaniel a pleading look, torn between protocol and compassion. Nathaniel's heart twisted, an unfamiliar ache. He took a step closer, squatting so his eyes met hers. His voice, so often cold and commanding, softened. "Hey there, are you lost?" The girl's response came without hesitation, her tone eerily calm for a child so young. "Where can I buy a dad?" Time stopped. Every conversation in the lobby fizzled out. Phones hovered, frozen midair. Nathaniel's throat went dry. "I'm sorry. What did you say?" He managed, the words barely above a whisper. The little girl didn't break eye contact. She repeated more quietly but with the same conviction. "I want to buy a dad. I saved my coins. Mommy says dads help and I need one." He'd 100 meetings, deals, and crises. None had ever left Nathaniel speechless. But this felt like a punch to the chest. For a heartbeat, he saw himself as a child, alone at the kitchen table, wishing someone would walk through the door and make everything okay. He blinked, forcing himself back to the present. "My name's Evie," the girl added, holding up a small plastic coin purse. "I have $12.62. He almost laughed, then caught himself. It wasn't a joke. He glanced around, desperate for help. None came. Staff watched, waiting for him to solve the problem. He was Nathaniel Carter, after all. But in that moment, Nathaniel realized he didn't want to solve a problem. He wanted to understand it. He knelt down fully, ignoring the faint ache in his knees. "Evie," he said gently, "you don't need to buy a dad. Some things in this world aren't for sale." Her brow furrowed. "But I need one. Mommy's sick. I tried to help, but I'm just a kid. My teacher said daddies fix things. I want to buy one, so my mom will get better." Nathaniel's voice cracked. He had survived divorce, estrangement, the loneliness of empty penthouses and echoing boardrooms. But nothing prepared him for this, a child so desperate for help that she thought love could be bought. He extended his hand, hesitating. "Maybe I could help. Maybe I could be, well, maybe I could help you for free." Evie didn't smile, but she didn't hesitate. She slipped her small hand into his, her grip warm and trusting. "If you're my dad, you have to help Mommy. Promise." I promise, Nathaniel whispered. A ripple passed through the lobby, a mixture of curiosity, awkwardness, and wonder. The security guard took a step forward, but Nathaniel shook his head. This was his decision now. He stood, Evie's hand still in his, and turned to his stunned assistant. Cancel my meetings. All of them. Julia's eyes widened. But, sir, you have... Not today, he said, and for the first time in memory ignored the anxious flutter of his phone in his pocket. The ride home. The rain fell harder as Nathaniel guided Evie through the doors, shielding her with his coat. He called for his car, ignoring the protest from his driver about getting the seats wet. As they drove, Evie's small hand remained tangled with his. She gave the driver an address Nathaniel had never heard. The city's glitter faded into cracked pavement and sagging buildings. Nathaniel watched the world shift outside the window, feeling an old memory stir. A cramped apartment, his own mother working 3 jobs. Nights when dinner was nothing but instant soup and a promise. Evie spoke only once, voice barely a whisper. Do you know how to fix sick people? Nathaniel shook his head. No, but I know how to find people who can help. She nodded as if she'd already decided to trust him. Her resilience startled him. What kind of world demanded so much strength from a child? They turned onto a side street Nathaniel recognized from his own childhood. A faded mural, a shuttered grocery. His chest tightened. Evie tugged his hand, directing him up a creaking metal staircase to the 2nd floor. The hallway smelled of mildew and years of forgotten hope. She fished a key from her backpack, unlocked the door, and pushed it open. The apartment was dark, the only light from a cracked window. Toys littered the floor. A blanket lay neatly folded on the couch. Drawings of rainbows and stick figures brightened the peeling walls. On the futon near the window lay a woman, thin, pale, hair tangled against the pillow. She looked up as they entered, and for a moment, Nathaniel's heart stopped. Eden? He breathed, the name escaping before he could stop it. Eden Reyes stared at him, disbelief warring with exhaustion in her eyes. She tried to sit up, but coughed weakly. Evie skipped over, laying her head gently on her mother's lap. Mommy, I brought a dad. Eden's lips parted, her gaze flicking from Evie to Nathaniel. She managed a smile, though it wobbled. You really did, didn't you? Nathaniel dropped to his knees beside the futon, hands shaking. He barely recognized her, but the memories flooded back. The girl he loved, the summer he lost, the life he'd buried beneath ambition. How? He started, but the question died. There were too many words, none that would make sense. Eden brushed a strand of hair from her daughter's face, her fingers trembling. You didn't have to come, Nathaniel. I didn't want you to see me like this. He shook his head, voice raw. I'm here now. That's all that matters. Evie crawled into her mother's arms, watching Nathaniel with quiet curiosity. Are you really my dad? Nathaniel hesitated, then nodded, emotion thick in his throat. If you'll have me, I'd be honored. Eden's tears fell freely now. She reached out, taking Nathaniel's hand in hers. Frail, but warm. We could use a little help. As rain beat softly against the glass, Nathaniel knew this was the moment his life truly began. All the boardrooms, accolades, and deals in the world meant nothing compared to the tiny, brave hand in his, and the woman who, against all odds, had survived. He stood promising himself he would not leave them again. And as night fell over the city, Nathaniel Carter walked away from his carefully curated empire into a life more uncertain, more real, and more precious than he'd ever imagined. Rain battered the city as Nathaniel Carter sat on the threadbare rug of Eden's apartment. Evie curled against her mother's side, eyes watching the new man in their lives as if he were both a puzzle and a lifeline. For years, Nathaniel had hidden behind numbers, built skyscrapers out of ambition and ice, convinced himself that real connection was a myth. But tonight, with Evie quietly clutching her coin purse and Eden fighting for breath beside him, all of his old certainties dissolved. Eden tried to push herself up, pride warring with pain. Nathaniel, you don't have to stay, she whispered. I can handle this. I have for years. He knelt beside her, voice gentle but steady. You shouldn't have had to handle it alone. His hand found hers, so light, almost weightless, yet anchored with a decade of history. "Let me help, please." For a moment, Eden closed her eyes, letting herself remember. Nathaniel, the boy she'd loved, the man she'd never thought she'd see again, the one she'd let slip through her fingers when she believed dreams were more important than people, or maybe just because she was scared. Evie, oblivious to the storm of emotions, dug into her backpack. "Mommy, can I give him my coins?" "That's how you pay people for helping, right?" she said, innocence shining through exhaustion. Eden's lips trembled with a bittersweet smile. "No, sweetheart. Not everyone helps for money. Some people help because they care." Nathaniel swallowed hard, realizing how long it had been since someone expected nothing from him but kindness. "I don't need your coins, Evie," he said softly. "But I'd like to stay, if you both want me." The quiet that followed was thick with unspoken hopes. Eden glanced down at her daughter, who simply nodded, and that small gesture was all the permission Nathaniel needed. He got up and moved to the kitchen, surveying the near-empty cabinets. Years of plenty hadn't prepared him for this. The way the refrigerator's hum seemed to echo off bare shelves, how a can of soup and some crackers counted as a meal. He found a tea bag, ancient but serviceable, and made a cup for Eden, forcing himself to slow down, to listen, to be present in the moment. Later, as Evie slept on the couch, her arms wrapped around a battered stuffed rabbit, Nathaniel and Eden talked. At first, their conversation stuttered, old wounds raw and visible. He learned how Eden had lost her job during the last recession, how illness had crept in silently, how she had sold everything of value except her pride. She confessed how she'd once considered calling him, but convinced herself he wouldn't remember. Or worse, that he'd moved on. Nathaniel's voice broke as he explained the years he'd spent burying himself in work, convincing himself he was better off alone, lying awake at night wondering why every victory felt hollow. The hours slipped by, the city outside washing itself clean. At dawn, Nathaniel realized he hadn't checked his phone once all night. He stood, stretching, feeling older but lighter. "I'll be back," he promised. "Don't open the door for anyone but me. I'll bring breakfast. And I'll make calls. We're going to get you the care you need, Eden." Eden, exhaustion clouding her features, only nodded, tears brightening her eyes. Nathaniel left the apartment feeling both terrified and exhilarated, like a man standing at the edge of something vast and unknown. The next day, a world changed. By 8 a.m., Nathaniel was back, arms full of groceries. Evie ran to him, clinging to his leg. For the first time, her laughter echoed in the apartment. The three of them ate together, just scrambled eggs and toast, but to Nathaniel, it tasted better than any meal at the city's finest restaurants. The new routine took root with a surprising tenderness. Each morning, Nathaniel would bring food, sometimes flowers for Eden, sometimes crayons for Evie. He arranged for a nurse to visit, then specialists. Quietly, without fuss or show, he paid the rent in advance, sent a cleaner to brighten the little apartment, and filled the kitchen cabinets. The neighbors watched, whispering at first. What was the billionaire doing in their part of town? Nathaniel didn't care. He even caught himself smiling when old Mrs. Alvarez from next door handed him a Tupperware of tamales with a wink, muttering, "Family is everything, young man. Don't forget it." Every day, Evie's trust in Nathaniel grew. One morning, she crept into his lap, held his face in her hands, and declared, "If you're my dad, you have to go to my school fair." All the dads go. Nathaniel laughed, a real unguarded sound. "I've never been to a school fair in my life." Evie looked shocked. "That's okay. I'll show you how." From boardroom to playground. The day of the fair, Nathaniel arrived at the crumbling elementary school, feeling more nervous than he had at any shareholder meeting. Parents clustered in the gym, laughter and the scent of popcorn filling the air. Evie dragged him by the hand from game to game. When she won a stuffed bear at the ring toss, she insisted, "You have to win something too." He let her paint his face, blue and gold stripes. He ate funnel cake. When the fathers gathered for the egg and spoon race, Evie pushed him forward, giggling. Nathaniel, the man who never lost, stumbled on the first lap, falling into a pile of laughter and sticky egg yolk. But Evie cheered, and for once, losing felt like winning everything. Other parents stared, some with awe, some with envy. A few recognized him, Nathaniel Carter, billionaire. But in that gym, covered in face paint and flour, he was just Evie's dad. He noticed Eden at the edge of the crowd, fragile but smiling, her eyes shining with pride. For a moment, Nathaniel wished he could freeze time. The hospital visit. But reality was never far. One evening, Eden collapsed, fever burning through her frail body. Nathaniel rushed her to the hospital, heart pounding. The doctors worked quickly. Pneumonia, complications from her illness. Nathaniel sat in the waiting room, Evie curled in his lap, clinging to him as if he were her only anchor in a storm. As midnight ticked by, Nathaniel remembered the years he'd spent running from anything that hurt. Now for the first time he prayed, clumsy, desperate, sincere. Finally the doctor returned. She's stable. She'll need weeks of rest, but she's lucky she got here in time. Nathaniel thanked him, but it was Evie's sleepy voice that broke the tension. You saved her, she whispered. Nathaniel pressed a kiss to her head. We saved her, Evie. Together. A new home. When Eden was discharged, Nathaniel insisted, no more dark apartments, no more struggle. He moved them both into his countryside estate, a place he'd bought for weekends that never happened. The mansion was cold and intimidating at first, but Nathaniel made it warm, ordering books for Eden, filling the kitchen with sunlight and laughter, letting Evie pick out new pajamas and paint her own name on the bedroom door. Eden's health improved rapidly, surrounded by care and comfort. Nathaniel arranged for her to see the city's best specialists. He sat with her in the evenings, talking about old times, apologizing for years lost. One night as Evie drifted to sleep, Eden turned to him, voice trembling. Why are you doing all this? Nathaniel's answer was simple, his heart wide open. Because I should have been here all along. Because family isn't about perfection. It's about showing up. Tears slid down Eden's face, and Nathaniel gathered her into his arms, promising silently to never let go again. First signs of hope. Weeks passed, and the mansion began to feel like home. Evie blossomed, her laughter brighter, her nightmares fading. Eden found her strength again, writing in journals, reading poetry to Evie by the window. Nathaniel changed too. He took calls on the porch instead of the office. He turned down meetings for soccer games and story time. Julia, his assistant, sent him a message one morning. I don't know what happened to you, but I hope it never changes. He smiled, deleting the email. For the first time, Nathaniel Carter was not running from his past or chasing the future. He was living moment by moment in the unpredictable, beautiful now. One night, as rain tapped softly on the roof, Eden whispered, Evie keeps asking if you'll be here in the morning. Nathaniel took her hand, gentle but certain. Tell her I'll always be here. Tell her she never has to buy a dad again. And as the storm faded, a fragile peace settled over the house. A family, rebuilt from hope and second chances, finding its way at last. Sunlight streamed through the old oaks outside Nathaniel's estate, spilling golden warmth over the breakfast table. The air was filled with new sounds, the clatter of Evie's laughter, the gentle clink of Eden's teacup, and the contented sighs of a man who had finally let himself feel at home. Nathaniel Carter, once the city's untouchable billionaire, now wore flour on his shirt and a smile that came more easily each day. Their lives moved to a new rhythm, soft, real, and full of gentle chaos. Gone were the cold silences of the past. Now the kitchen smelled of cinnamon and vanilla every morning as Eden rediscovered baking, teaching Evie to knead dough and read recipes, while Nathaniel hovered nearby, always ready to sweep up spilled flour or sneak an extra spoonful of chocolate chips. As the weeks slipped by, the family created rituals, Sunday pancakes, stargazing on the back porch, evenings curled up with storybooks by the fire. Nathaniel marveled at how such small, ordinary moments could feel like treasure. One afternoon, he watched Evie chase butterflies across the wildflower lawn, her laughter ringing out, a sound he'd never known he was missing until now. But there were challenges too. Nathaniel's company, Carter Holdings, was unaccustomed to his new priorities. Meetings were rescheduled, deals delayed. The board buzzed with gossip. rumors about their CEO's sudden absences and his mysterious life outside the city. Julia, ever loyal, fielded questions with a knowing smile. He's where he needs to be. For the first time, I think he's happy. Despite the whispers, the company did not falter. In fact, it flourished. Nathaniel's compassion, once considered a liability, became his greatest asset. He initiated new programs for single parents in the workplace, surprised employees with extended family leave, and quietly supported local charities. But the biggest change happened within Nathaniel himself. Each day he learned something new, not about business, but about love. He discovered that Evie liked her toast, barely brown, with honey not jam. That Eden's favorite poem was tucked inside a battered copy of Yeats, and that she still cried when she read it aloud. He learned how to patch scraped knees, how to braid Evie's hair on school mornings, and perhaps hardest of all, how to sit quietly, letting the world move at its own gentle pace. Sometimes the past crept in like a shadow. Eden's health, though improved, remained fragile. There were days when the exhaustion returned, when the fear resurfaced, but they faced those moments together, holding tight, never letting silence win. One chilly October night, after Evie had gone to sleep, Nathaniel found Eden in the study, staring out at the moonlit garden. She held her journal open on her lap but hadn't written a word. He sat beside her, folding her cold fingers into his warm ones. "What are you thinking about?" She hesitated, then whispered, "I'm scared. Sometimes it feels too good, like I'm waiting for it all to be taken away." Nathaniel nodded, understanding more than he could say. He had spent his life running from loss, building walls to keep pain out. Now he leaned into the fear. "We can't promise forever," he said quietly, "but I can promise this. I won't leave again. We'll face it all together, even the hard days." Eden's eyes filled with tears, but she smiled, leaning her head on his shoulder. "I believe you. For the first time, I really do." A promise. Made real, autumn gave way to the first snow, blanketing the estate in shimmering white. Evie shrieked with delight, pulling Nathaniel into the yard before breakfast to build a snowman. He surrendered his favorite tie to serve as a scarf for the lopsided creation, laughing as Evie declared, "Now he's the richest snowman in town." That evening, as the house filled with the scent of Eden's fresh bread, Nathaniel found Evie at the kitchen table, drawing with fierce concentration. She pushed the paper toward him, grinning. "It's us," she said. He looked down, three stick figures holding hands beneath a big yellow sun, their names written in crooked letters. Evie, Mommy, Dad. Nathaniel swallowed a lump in his throat. "I love it, Evie. I'll put it in my office so I never forget what matters." Evie nodded solemnly. "Promise you won't forget? Even if you have to go to work sometimes?" He hugged her tightly. "I promise. And I'll always come home." That night, after Eden and Evie had gone to bed, Nathaniel sat in his study, looking at the drawing. He realized he was no longer afraid of what he might lose. He was grateful for what he'd found. The test of family. The true test of their new life came one winter afternoon, when Evie's school hosted a family day. Each child was to bring a parent, or two. Nathaniel, nervous as a teenager, wore jeans for the first time in years and drove Evie to the school, Eden resting at home, but promising to come later. Inside the classroom, he was greeted by a sea of tiny hands and nervous parents. Some recognized him, some didn't. But as Evie proudly introduced him, "This is my dad. He came down from the clouds just for me." The other children swarmed, full of questions. Did he really fly in helicopters? Did he have a pet dragon? Nathaniel laughed, making up stories and listening to the wild dreams of children. For the first time, he felt completely at ease. No pretense, no pressure. Just a father, honored to be chosen. Later, as he watched Evie win a ribbon for her painting, a bright, hopeful picture of a home surrounded by hearts, Nathaniel spotted Eden in the doorway, wrapped in a warm scarf, eyes shining. She had made the journey, pushing through pain because she didn't want to miss another memory. He met her at the door, wrapping her in his arms. For a moment, time stopped. "You made it," he whispered. She nodded. "I wouldn't miss this for the world." A new kind of wealth, spring returned, bringing new life to the estate and new strength to Eden. Her health improved steadily, buoyed by love, rest, and the best care Nathaniel's fortune could provide. But more than money, it was presence, his daily devotion, Evie's bright laughter, and the comfort of being seen and cherished that truly healed her. Eden began to write again, pouring her journey into essays and short stories. Soon, a local magazine published her work, and readers responded with letters of hope and gratitude. Nathaniel, reading her words late one night, was overcome by pride, not for what he had built, but for the woman and child who had rebuilt him. Evie thrived too. She filled the house with her art, her songs, and her questions. She stopped asking if Nathaniel would be there in the morning. She knew now, with a child's faith, that he would be. One afternoon, she slipped a note into his briefcase. "Thank you for being my dad. I didn't need to buy you after all." He found the note at a meeting and nearly wept. A promise sealed on a warm May evening, Nathaniel led Eden and Evie to the backyard, under the blooming cherry trees. Fairy lights twinkled overhead, and soft music played. There, in front of their closest friends and neighbors, people who had witnessed their struggle and their joy, Nathaniel knelt, not as a billionaire, but as a man who knew what it was to be lost and found. "Eden," he said, voice trembling, "I promise to spend every day earning this second chance, not just as your partner, but as your family. Will you marry me?" Eden's yes was quiet but sure, her eyes alight with tears and laughter. Evie danced around them, throwing petals, shouting, "We're really a family now." The ceremony that followed was simple but perfect. No tabloids, no spectacle, just love, spoken in vows and sealed with a kiss beneath the stars. The story that stays. Years later, the story of the little girl who walked into an office asking to buy a dad would spread, shared in magazines, whispered in the city, recounted at charity galas. Nathaniel often spoke at events for children's welfare and single-parent support, using his platform not to boast of his wealth, but to remind people that the greatest riches are found in showing up for those who need you. At home, the drawing Evie made that first winter remained framed in Nathaniel's study, a daily reminder of what mattered most. Some nights, as the family sat together by the fire, Eden would read aloud from her latest book, Evie curled between them. Nathaniel would close his eyes, letting the words and warmth settle deep into his heart. If anyone had asked him years ago what made a family, he might have spoken about blood or legacy. Now he knew the truth. Family is built, moment by fragile moment, out of trust, forgiveness, and love. It was a lesson learned not in boardrooms, but in the humble strength of a little girl who believed that hope could buy her a father, and in the courage of a woman who let love in, even when she thought it was too late. In the end, it wasn't the billionaire's money that changed their lives. It was the choice to show up, to stay, and to love, no matter what. And that's a kind of wealth you can't ever buy.